Hi, I'm Maggie. Here on the channel, I tell true stories, or ones inspired by truths many women would rather keep quiet. Stories of mothers, wives, widows, women who loved to their breaking point, and learned that silence speaks too. Today's story is about Evelyn Moore, a 61-year-old former art teacher who believed her family was her most beautiful canvas. But when her daughter Rachel blocked her on every social platform and sent a single message, "It's over, don't contact me," that canvas shattered. If you believe every story has two sides, hit subscribe and stay with me to the end, because sometimes the truth arrives in the voice we least expect. But I'll let her tell it herself. I remember the sound, the record turning slowly, those soft pops, one by one. It was my mother's old rotary phone, the one I could never bring myself to throw away. I always said that sound felt like time breathing. Ever since Rachel blocked me, the house went mute. Even the clock seemed to mock me, ticking the emptiness of the hours. And when the phone rang, my heart stopped. For a second I thought it was her. But on the other end, it wasn't my daughter's voice. It was a man's voice, calm, formal, and what he said would change everything. When I met Andrew, I still believed love had a smell. His smelled like a clean hospital, alcohol, disinfectant, and cold coffee. He was a surgical resident, ambitious, always in a rush, and he had that way of looking at you that made you feel chosen. I was an art teacher at a public school in Boston. My hands were stained with paint, and my head was full of dreams that didn't fit on spreadsheets. Andrew said he admired that about me, my lightness. But over time, I realized he mistook it for submission. At first, he was kind. He brought flowers when I stayed late prepping lessons, sat on the living room floor, and pretended to understand my paintings. "You're my calm," he'd say. And I believed him. Little by little, that calm became a requirement. He wanted me calm. Always. Even when he came home late, even when he forgot dates, even when he left me talking to myself. I remember one night in particular, my 27th birthday. I'd made a special dinner, lit candles, put on that blue dress he said he loved. I waited until 10. The cake was melting, the candles had burned out, the phone was silent. When he walked in at 11:30, he didn't even apologize. He just said, "Emergency surgery. You understand." And I said, I understood. I always said, I understood. Because that's what a good wife does, right? Understands, forgives, waits. After the wedding, I traded my studio for the kitchen, my oils for an apron. "It's just for a while," he'd say. But a while stretched into decades. I stopped painting, and I didn't notice when the house walls began to lose their color, and I did too. There was one painting I never finished. It sat in the studio for years, covered by an old sheet. A self-portrait, me at 25, hair loose in the wind, smiling at something outside the frame. I could never paint what was on the other side. I think, deep down, I already knew there was nothing there. Rachel was born 2 years after the wedding. A beautiful girl, with huge eyes who inherited her father's smile. Andrew became obsessed with work and with his reputation. He was the kind of man who always had to be the best. When the baby cried, he said the sound irritated him, that I should know how to soothe her. And I tried, with lullabies, stories, and that gentle touch only mothers have. But Rachel grew up seeing her father as the hero, and me as a shadow. She was proud of him. When people asked what her dad did, her eyes lit up. "My dad saves lives." And when they asked what I did, she shrugged. "She stays home." I remember the first time that truly hurt. At a parent-teacher night when Rachel was 8, the teacher asked about parents' jobs. Rachel talked about her father for 5 minutes, how important he was, the surgeries, the lives he saved. When the teacher asked about me, Rachel went quiet, then said almost apologetically, "My mom takes care of me." As if caring were less than saving, as if love were less than medicine. Back then, I thought loving meant keeping quiet. Quiet when he corrected my tone of voice. Quiet when he laughed at my ideas. Quiet when he said art doesn't pay bills. quiet when I found the first unfamiliar perfume on his shirt, and the second, and the third. One day I took Rachel to my old studio, dusty and forgotten. I showed her my canvases, portraits, landscapes, the light studies I loved to do. She looked, unmoved. "You painted these?" "Yes, honey, before I married your father." She laughed. "You should have kept going." It felt like a slap. But she was right. I should have kept going. And I didn't. Because Andrew always said there wasn't time. Because Rachel always needed me. Because the house always demanded more. And in the end, because I let other people tell me who I was. I realized the love I'd built wasn't a house. It was a frame. Pretty on the outside, empty inside. Andrew started traveling more. Conferences, on-call nights, important meetings. And I started finding perfumes on shirts, deleted messages, worn-out excuses. But I never confronted him. I thought my job was to hold the home together, even if I was doing it alone. Until the day he died. It was a cold morning in February. The hospital called to say he'd had a heart attack during surgery. I remember gripping the phone so hard my fingers went white. The same old rotary phone. The spin and click of that dial burned into me, as if pain had its own rhythm. When I hung up, I stood in the middle of the room for hours. I didn't cry. I couldn't. It was as if my body knew what my mind refused to accept. I wasn't mourning a love. I was mourning an illusion. Rachel was 24. She cried, of course, but soon she lifted her chin and said, "He died working. He was a hero." And me. I remained the shadow. The funeral was large. Doctors, patients, even reporters. Everyone spoke of Andrew as if he were a saint, and there I was, in black, nodding, accepting hugs from people I barely knew. A woman approached, young, pretty, red-eyed. She held my hand and said, "He'll be missed." Something in her voice told me. She was one of them. Maybe the last. Maybe the only one who really loved him. I didn't ask. I just slipped my hand from hers and walked up to the casket. I looked at Andrew one last time and thought, "You took everything from me, except what I can still become." In the months after, Rachel changed. Practical, hard. She moved to New York, went into finance, surrounded herself with people like her father, competitive, brilliant, untouchable. At first, she called every day, then once a week, then only when she needed something. I tried to keep in touch. I'd send messages about the weather, recipes she loved as a child, memories I thought might make her smile. Her replies kept shrinking. "Okay, Mom." "I'm busy." "Talk later." Her last visit to Boston was 2 years ago. She rushed through the house, assessing everything as if it were a property on the market. "Mom, this place is too big for you alone. You should sell." "I don't want to sell, Rachel. This house is my story," she sighed. "Stories don't pay bills." We went quiet. She stared at her father's portrait on the wall, and I realized I'd never competed with another woman. I'd competed with his ghost. The argument turned bitter when she suggested selling my mother's piano and the old phone. "This is junk, Mom." "It's not junk, Rachel. It's memory. Memory doesn't buy a future." It was the first time I ever raised my voice to her. "And money doesn't buy love." She stared back, cold, then slammed the door on her way out. After that, silence. Days, weeks, then months. And then the message. The one that cut like glass. "It's over. Don't contact me." I deleted it and reread it dozens of times, but the wound stayed open. The house got even quieter. The smell of dried paint followed me from room to room, as if my memories were trying to wake me up. Sometimes I sat in the studio and watched the light creep across the floor. It was beautiful, but cold, like my daughter's love. I spent more time alone, not by choice, but for lack of options. The friends I'd had during Andrew's life disappeared with him. Too late, I realized they'd never been my friends. They were the wives of his colleagues. And when a husband dies, the wife disappears from the guest list. I tried going back to church. The priest was kind, but the sermons washed over me without sinking in. I prayed, yes, but it felt like talking to a ceiling. God seemed far away, or maybe I was far from him. One afternoon, I pulled out an old canvas and tried to paint. My hand shook so badly, the line came out crooked, lifeless. I threw the brush down and cried. I cried like I hadn't since the funeral. I cried for the woman I was, for the woman I could have been, and for the woman I still didn't know if I could become. That night, I sat beside the old phone. I ran my fingers over the scuffed dial, feeling the marks of time. My mother used to say, "As long as the phone rings, someone remembers you." Well, Mother, no one was calling anymore, and I was starting to forget myself. That morning, the sky was gray. Boston hung between winter and spring, that season when nothing blooms but nothing quite dies. An email dinged on my computer. It was from Rachel. Subject line, about the house. The body, even colder. "Mom, I need you to sell the house. It's the right thing to do. I have debts and can't wait. I'll send the paperwork tomorrow. Rachel." I read it over and over. Each word landed like a verdict. Sell the house, the place where she took her first steps, where she learned to read, where her father was laid out. The home I kept standing even when everything in me wanted to give up. I wrote back, trying to stay calm. "Rachel, sweetheart, I understand you may be going through a hard time, but this house is all I have left. I can't sell it." Sent. Waited. Nothing. 3 days later, she replied. Short, impersonal. "You've always been selfish. It's over. Don't contact me." Then came the block. Phone, email, social media. It was as if she deleted her mother from her life with one tap. I tried to convince myself it was temporary anger. But as days passed, I realized it wasn't. It was a severing. And with that severing came silence. The kind of silence that has a sound. An old house breathing, memories shifting at night, footsteps that aren't footsteps, just recollections walking the halls. I began talking to myself. I spoke to Andrew's portrait as if it had answers. Would you be proud of her? The portrait, of course, never answered. 2 weeks after the block, I decided to do something different. I called an old colleague, Martha, who still taught art at my old school. I asked if she needed help, anything, even as a volunteer. Her voice was warm but cautious. "Evelyn, it's so good to hear your voice. Of course, I'd love your help, but are you okay?" "I'm trying to be," I said. And it was true. I went back the next week. The smell of chalk and fresh paint hit me like a wave of nostalgia. Kids ran through the halls, laughing, shouting, living. I felt old, not in years, but in distance from that kind of life. Martha put me with a third-grade class, 22 students, bright eyes, endless questions. A little girl named Sophie came up to me. "Do you paint?" "I used to." "Why did you stop?" I had no answer. How do you tell an 8-year-old we sometimes stop doing what we love because we forget we still exist? "Because life got busy," I finally said. She scrunched her nose. "My mom says we always make time for what matters." That went straight through me. I spent the rest of the afternoon helping the kids mix colors, hold brushes, not fear mistakes. And I realized I was teaching myself. One afternoon, I decided to truly clean the studio. Dried paints, canvases under sheets, the air filled with old turpentine. And for a moment, I felt alive again. I grabbed a small canvas and drew a line. But my hand trembled. I didn't know if it was emotion or fatigue. Maybe both. That's when I heard it. The sound. The old rotary phone. A deep dragging ring from the living room. It took me a second to place it, because that phone hadn't rung in years. I kept it plugged in out of habit, out of attachment. But no one called. My first feeling was fear. A shiver at the back of my neck, as if someone had opened a hidden door inside me. The ring echoed through the house. Slow, insistent. Ring. 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 I walked to the living room. Each step felt heavier than the last. The phone sat on the sideboard next to a photo of my mother. It had been hers, black, with a scuffed dial and a coiled cord. She used to say, "As long as the phone rings, someone remembers you." Well, Mother. This time, the one remembering was fate. I picked up. Hello? Silence. For a moment, I thought it was a wrong number. Then a male voice, calm and professional. Is this Evelyn Moore? Yes. Who's speaking? My name is Thomas Reed. I'm an attorney in New York. I'm calling on behalf of your daughter, Rachel Moore. My heart lurched. The voice was distant, but precise. Rachel? What happened to her? A long pause. Too long. And in that space, my mind created every possible scenario. I'm sorry, Mrs. Moore. Your daughter was in a car accident last night. She's hospitalized. I felt the floor drop away. The click-click of the dial still seemed to echo, as if life had spun back to the same point where everything once collapsed. My voice came out raw. Is she alive? She is, but in a coma. And there's something you need to know. Ice spread through me. His tone shifted, no longer technical, but cautious. Your daughter asked that, if anything happened to her, I contact you. It made no sense. But she blocked me. She said she didn't want to talk to me. I know, ma'am. But there's a letter in my office, signed by her, addressed to you. I'd like to deliver it in person. A letter. From Rachel. After everything. I went silent. Rain tapped against the window, filling the gap. He continued. There's another detail. You're the temporary legal custodian of her assets until further notice. We need to review some documents. Assets. The word felt strange. Rachel had never told me about any assets. He explained, it appears there's a pending financial matter involving her husband, Mr. Mark Pearson. He is, let's say, trying to resolve things his own way. His own way. I didn't need to ask what that meant. His voice carried the kind of care that hides tragedies. We agreed to speak again in a few hours. I hung up, but the sound kept ringing in my head. The dial's click, the metallic tone, the echo. As if time had pulled me back into a story I didn't want to live again. I sat on the couch staring at the phone. The same object that had once announced my husband's death now brought my daughter's pain. And yet, a thread of hope flickered. Maybe that ring had come to return something to me. I didn't know what. Not yet. I stayed up all night, between tears and prayers. I called the New York hospital he mentioned. They confirmed. Rachel Moore admitted. Stable condition. Induced coma. Before dawn, I packed a bag. My warmest coat, her childhood photo, and, for reasons I couldn't name, the old phone. I unscrewed the cord and slipped it into my purse. Maybe out of superstition. Maybe because part of me believed that if it rang again, it would be her. Locking the front door, I saw my reflection in the glass. An older woman, tired, but determined. I didn't know what awaited me in New York, but I knew our story wasn't over. And deep down, something told me, Rachel wasn't the woman I thought she was. And what the lawyer would tell me there would change everything I believed about my own daughter. The train to New York left at 6 a.m. The car was nearly empty. Outside, the February sky looked like a washed-out canvas. The scenery flew by the window, but everything inside me was still. I sat beside an elderly woman quietly knitting. Her needles moved in a soothing rhythm. She caught me looking and smiled. I do this when I'm nervous, she said. Does it help? Sometimes. Other times, it just reminds me I'm still here. I nodded. I knew exactly what she meant. During the ride, Thomas Reed called again. He'd meet me at the hospital. His voice carried the weight of a truth he wasn't ready to say out loud. I reached Manhattan at noon. The air smelled of gasoline, coffee, and hurry, the scent that always made me feel late to my own life. I took a cab. The driver said nothing. I was grateful. In the back seat, I clutched the old phone in my bag like a promise. The city flashed by. Tall buildings, rushing people, glittering windows. It all felt so far from my reality. Rachel had chosen to live here, in this concrete forest where no one has time to stop. Maybe that's why she drifted from me. I was too slow for her pace, too calm for her ambition, too old-fashioned for her world. Inside the hospital, the smell changed. Alcohol, metal, and silence, the kind that weighs more than pain. Rachel was in room 207, lying there surrounded by machines, so pale she looked like part of the sheet. I touched the bed rail and whispered, "Hi, sweetheart. Mom's here." No answer. Just the steady beep of the heart monitor. That sound became my new clock. I sat and held her hand. Cold. Limp. Still, I squeezed, as if warmth could call her back. I stayed for hours, counting breaths, watching her chest rise and fall with the machine. I tried to remember the last time I truly held that hand. I couldn't. Thomas arrived minutes later. Gray hair, dark suit, gentle eyes, tired. "Mrs. Moore? I'm Thomas Reed. Thank you for calling. Will she be okay?" He took a breath. "The doctors believe so, but there are complicated issues. Your daughter was under investigation before the accident." Cold shot through me. Investigation? For what? Financial fraud, a large sum, millions. But there are strong signs she wasn't the author, she was the fall guy. The words hung in the air, too heavy to drop. Rachel. Fraud? My girl who hated owing anyone a dime? He opened a folder. Her husband, Mark Pearson, runs an investment fund. Rachel was a nominal partner, but we found he used her accounts to cover illegal transactions. The crash happened the night she tried to leave the firm. I tried to process. It felt like the hospital floor had cracked into a fault line, me standing in the split. Thomas went on. "She left you a letter. It's in my office, but perhaps wait until you're calmer." "No, I want it now." He hesitated, then pulled an envelope from his inner pocket. I knew the handwriting before I opened it, her slanted, slightly nervous script from her teenage years. My hands shook as I read, "Mom, if this letter gets to you, it means I did one thing right. Too late. I wanted to prove I was nothing like you, strong, untouchable, but I ended up trapped in the same kind of love that broke you. If anything happens to me, don't believe Mark. And please, don't hate me. Rachel." The words trembled on the page, blurred by old tears. For a second, the room spun. Thomas rested a hand on my shoulder. "There's more. Mr. Pearson tried to stop me from contacting you. He believes if you step back, he'll have full control over her assets and over the narrative." That's when I decided I would confront him. That night, I went to their apartment, a glass and steel tower on Park Avenue. The doorman eyed me, but Thomas had cleared my name. The lobby was cold luxury, white marble, crystal chandeliers, perfectly pruned plants. Beautiful, lifeless. The elevator rose in silence. My reflection in the mirrored walls looked like someone else, older, yes, but steadier. The doors opened on the 23rd floor, a long, carpeted, silent hallway. I walked to 2307, breathed in, rang the bell. Mark opened in seconds, the kind of man who learned to smile without a soul. Expensive suit, gold watch, eyes that didn't blink. Tall, well-groomed, radiating the confidence of someone rarely contradicted. "Mrs. Moore, what an unpleasant surprise. I'm here to see my daughter. She's in good hands. As for everything else, I'll let the lawyers handle it. I speak for her now." He laughed softly. "You, a retired school teacher? Do you have any idea what it would cost to clean up what she's done?" Something flared in me, the same quiet rage I'd felt looking at Andrew. Men who confuse power with divine right. If what she did was trust you, then yes, I know the price. His smile slipped. "Careful, Mrs. Moore." "No, you be careful. I've already lost everything once. I'm not afraid anymore." He tried to hold the pose, but his eyes betrayed him, a flash of fear. I left before he regained control. In the days that followed, I returned to the hospital every day. Rachel didn't wake, but I talked to her anyway. I told childhood stories, the smell of paint, the first time she said, "Mama." Sometimes I swore her fingers moved. I told her about the day she was born, how I held that tiny body and promised to protect her from everything. I told her about our afternoons drawing when she still thought I knew it all. About school recitals, birthday parties, first loves, first heartbreaks, everything I hadn't said when she was still awake. A nurse named Maria, young, Filipino, kind, started bringing me tea each afternoon. "She can hear you," Maria said one day. "I've seen patients remember every word said at their bedside." "I hope so," I answered. "I'm late on so many words." She smiled gently. "It's never too late, ma'am." I wasn't sure. Thomas helped gather documents. We found suspicious transfers, forged signatures, offshore accounts. The more I saw, the clearer it became. Mark had used my daughter. He'd turned her into a shield, a scapegoat, a tool. And Rachel, eager to be strong, independent, everything I wasn't, had allowed it. Until she realized too late. One day, Thomas stopped me in the hall. "He's trying to withdraw funds from the joint account. I need your authorization to block it." I signed without thinking. For the first time in years, I felt I was truly protecting my child. But fate loves to test certainties. That night, dozing in the chair, I heard a sound. From inside my purse, the phone, the old rotary phone. Whirring, clicking, alive. No one else noticed. The hallway lights flickered. The heart monitor kept its steady beep. I picked up with shaking hands, my pulse hammered. "Hello?" Nothing. Then a whisper, faint, dragging. "Mom." My whole body went cold. "Rachel! Rachel, it's me! Can you hear me?" Silence. Then the heart monitor sped up. She was fighting her way back. I cried. I prayed. I promised that when she woke up, everything would be different. I pressed the phone to my chest, feeling its weight, not just physical, but symbolic. That object had crossed 3 generations. It had announced deaths, tragedies, losses. Now, it was announcing life, a chance, a return. The next morning, she opened her eyes. The waking was slow, painful. Chapped lips, a breath of a voice. But when she saw me, she tried to smile. "Mom." "Shh. I'm here, sweetheart. Don't talk." She squeezed my hand with surprising strength. It was him. Those 2 words were enough. The rest came in fragments over the hours. Mark had manipulated her, used her name on sham contracts. When she discovered it and threatened to expose him, he followed her. She was driving away, trying to get out, when her car was forced off the road. It rolled 3 times before stopping. She didn't remember everything, or maybe she didn't want to. But I saw in her eyes a truth fear couldn't erase. "I'm not you, Mom. I tried to fight. But he—" "You're stronger than you think, Rachel. And now we fight together." She cried. And for the first time since she was small, she let me hold her without pulling away. I held my daughter, feeling her body shake against mine, and I thought of all the times I wanted this and couldn't. All the times she pulled back, all the times I let her, no more. In the days that followed, Rachel talked. Slowly, with long pauses, but more honestly than I'd ever heard. She told me how she met Mark, at a corporate event, full of important people and empty talk. He was charismatic, successful, self-assured. Everything her father had been. "I thought he saw me," she said, "but he only saw what I could do for him." She described the early months, trips, expensive dinners, the thrill of finally belonging to a bigger world. "He made me feel powerful, Mom, like I'd finally stepped out of your shadow." It hurt, but it was true. When he proposed, I thought it was love. Now I see it was strategy. He needed someone clean, reliable, and I was so desperate to prove I wasn't you. "What do you mean?" She looked at me, eyes wet. "You were always so calm, so submissive. I grew up ashamed of that." "Ashamed of you, Mom. I swear I tried to be different." The words pierced me, but I didn't flinch. "I know. I ended up the same, just a pricier version." I squeezed her hand. "No, Rachel, you're not the same. You fought, you saw, you tried to leave. Too late. No, it's never too late." She cried again, but this time it felt like release. The next afternoon, Thomas brought bad news. "Mark found out we froze the accounts. He's furious, says he'll sue you both." I breathed in. Let him try. He did more than try. He came to the hospital, walked in with flowers and a plastic smile. Rachel tensed, her whole body rigid. I stepped between them. Don't touch her. I'm her husband. And I'm her mother. The difference is, I love her. He dropped the bouquet on the chair, the cellophane crackling. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Oh, I do. A coward. He leaned in, lowering his voice so only we could hear. You have no proof. My eyes went to my purse, the old phone. A plan formed right then. I looked him in the eyes. Then explain. Tell me what really happened. Your version. He launched into it, full of arrogance, justifying himself. How it's normal to use relatives' accounts. How Rachel knew from the start. How she was as guilty as he was, if not more. How the crash was unfortunate but convenient for the investigation. While he talked, my hand quietly spun the rotary dial. Voice recorder on my cell, the old phone's receiver pressed to its mic. The click-click covered the record tone. From the bed, Rachel watched, eyes wide, understanding. When he finished, I hung up the phone. After he left, Thomas listened to the audio. Mrs. Moore, this is a confession. No, this is justice. The next morning, the police arrived. They led Mark Pearson out in cuffs, still in his expensive suit. The press was there. Flashes, shouted questions. Thomas handled everything, keeping us out of sight. From the hospital room, Rachel and I watched on TV. He tried to look composed, but panic leaked through. His eyes, the sweat on his brow, his trembling hands. Rachel cried silently, holding my hand. I felt her heartbeat, weak but alive. And for the first time in years, she said, "Thank you, Mom." "You don't have to thank me," I said. "You just came home." But I knew some wounds don't heal with an arrest. Forgiveness moves slower than justice, and love is the hardest to rebuild. That day, as the sun rose over the city, I took the phone out of my bag, the one that carried the 2 calls that changed my life, the same metallic, unhurried sound that seemed to say, "There's still time." I held it, closed my eyes, and thought, time doesn't go backward, but sometimes it waits. Sirens still echoed when Thomas came in, pale. "Evelyn, he's trying to make bail. He's hired heavy-hitter attorneys." Rachel stirred, alarmed. "He can't." "It's okay," I said. "The truth is on tape." "He's not going anywhere." But Thomas looked worried. "There's more. We found a life insurance policy in Rachel's name. $2 million. The room turned cold. Rachel blanched. He was going to kill me?" "We can't say for sure, but the accident happened 2 days after the policy was signed." Rage rose in me like lava. This wasn't just manipulation or fraud. It was something far worse. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Hearings, statements, lawyers. Rachel had to relive it all, each lie, every forged document, every moment she trusted the wrong man. I was at her side for every second. Thomas turned out to be more than a lawyer. He was an ally. Mark tried everything. He claimed Rachel had been a willing accomplice, said I was manipulating a fragile woman, said the recording was illegal, doctored, out of context. But the truth has weight, and in front of a jury, it weighed more than any well-built lie. The verdict came on a cold April morning. 15 years for fraud, document tampering, and attempted homicide. Rachel cried when she heard it, not from relief, mourning. For the time lost, the love wasted, the woman she might have been if she'd never met him. 3 months after his sentencing, life was quieter, but this time, the silence didn't hurt. It was the silence before sunrise. A brief peace between what was and what could be. Rachel and I came back to Boston. The city felt smaller, gentler. Streets that once held cold memories now smelled like a fresh start. The house, the one she wanted to sell, was still standing. And for the first time, it felt like a home again. The papers covered the case for weeks. Mark convicted. Rachel cleared. But we gave no interviews, not a word. Justice had come from the courts, yes, but forgiveness had to be built at home. On our first day back, we walked into the studio together, the room that sat dusty for years, waiting for courage. Windows stuck, air thick with memories. But the scent, dried paint and linseed oil, still lingered. And somehow, it called me. Rachel stood at the door, watching. "Is this where you hid?" "No, honey, this is where I breathed." She pulled a sheet from one canvas. An unfinished portrait appeared, her at 6, smiling, pigtails crooked. Her hand flew to her mouth. "I didn't know you painted this. I didn't remember." She laughed through tears. "I think I spent years trying to erase what made you you. And I erased what made you free." We stood there in silence, until she whispered, "Paint again, Mom." So that's how it started. Over the next days, we reorganized the studio. We sanded, painted walls, bought fresh paints and clean rags. And the old phone earned a place of honor on the table, gleaming now like a trophy. Strange, it didn't ring anymore, but it felt present, watchful, a silent guardian of our story. I began to paint slowly, finding the rhythm again. My hands shook at first, then the body remembered. Each brush stroke was a prayer. Each color, a memory made light. Rachel hovered nearby, mixing paint, rinsing brushes, sometimes just watching. One day, she picked up a brush. "Can I try?" "Of course." She laughed, nervous. "I don't know how." "No one does at the beginning. We just paint." She drew a crooked line, then another. She laughed at herself. And for the first time in years, I saw the little girl she used to be. One day she asked, "Do you still miss Dad?" I thought for a moment. I miss who I thought he was. I think I do too, with Mark. We don't have to carry that anymore, Rachel. When you accept pain, it turns into space. She smiled. Space for what? For light. One afternoon brought an unexpected visitor, Thomas, still in a suit, but lighter than I'd ever seen him. He came with a folder and a smile. "The case is officially closed. And one more thing." He showed me a document. "Rachel transferred the house to your name." I looked at her, stunned. "You did this?" "It's where you belong, Mom, and now, me too." I felt roots push into the floor. For so long, this house had been my prison. Now, it was my freedom. Thomas stayed for tea. We talked about simple things, the weather, Rachel's plans, my paintings. He glanced at the phone on the table. "So that's the famous phone?" "That's the one." "May I?" I nodded. He picked it up carefully, almost reverently, spinning the dial to hear the click. "My grandmother had one just like it. I loved playing with it as a kid." He smiled, nostalgic. "You know, sometimes I think we left the right things in the past. Today, everything's so disposable." "People included," Rachel murmured. He looked at her kindly. "But you've both proved some things, and some people are worth fighting to keep." In the months that followed, Rachel started over too. She left New York for good, opened a small online consulting practice, working from home. More importantly, she started therapy. With every session, she seemed more alive. One day she told me, "My therapist asked when I last felt at home. I said, 'When I heard your voice, Mom, that day at the hospital when you stood up to him without fear.' I smiled. Funny, that was the day I felt alive too." Rachel began morning walks. Started reading again, novels, poetry, the things she loved as a teen and abandoned as an adult. She cooked with me, rediscovering childhood recipes. One afternoon, while we made cinnamon cookies, she said, "You know what scares me most?" "What?" "That I could have lived my whole life without waking up." "But you did wake up." "Because of you." "No, because of you. I just showed up when you called." She stopped stirring and looked at me. "I never called, Mom." "Yes, you did. In that letter. In that desperate moment. You called me." She hugged me, crying, and I held my daughter, knowing that one hug was worth every tear. Then came the painting, the one that sealed everything. I painted the old phone. Warm tones in the background, gold, copper, burnt red. In the center, the black handset, the dial gleaming in the light, and where the cord should be, I painted something new, a red ribbon tying receiver to base as if time had finally reconciled itself. When I finished, Rachel was quiet for a long time, just looking. "It's beautiful, Mom. It's true. What's it called?" "The Call," she smiled. "Perfect." Martha, my former colleague, saw it when she visited. "Evelyn, people need to see this. The community gallery is looking for local artists." "I don't know." "Mom," Rachel said, "let them see." And so we did. The painting became the centerpiece of a small show called Silenced Voices. Women came, looked, cried, told their stories. Each one saw something different: longing, courage, faith. An elderly woman stood in front of it for nearly an hour. When I approached, she said, "My husband died 10 years ago. Our house phone is still there. I never could take it down." "Why not?" "Because it was the last thing he touched before leaving for work that day." I held her hand. "Then don't take it down. Some things deserve to stay." A local reporter asked what the phone represents. I answered, "What remained when love left, and what brought me back when love returned." The piece ran in the city paper, small, discreet, sincere. Rachel framed it and hung it in the kitchen. One evening after the show, Rachel and I sat on the porch with chamomile tea, my mother's favorite. The moon reflected in the studio window. The phone sat inside, unmoving, but alive in memory. Rachel broke the quiet. "Do you believe in destiny?" "I believe in God, and that He speaks through what we stubbornly keep." She laughed. "So technically, He's called you twice. And I've learned to pick up." We laughed, lightly, freely, the kind of laughter we hadn't heard in years. After a while, she said, "I've been thinking about starting therapy groups for victims of financial abuse, helping women who went through what I did." I looked at her, surprised and proud. "Think you can do it?" "I don't know. But I think I need to try." "Then try. I'll be here." "I know, Mom. I always knew. I think that's been my greatest luck." The following Sunday, we went to church together. The same church where I married Andrew. The same one where his wake was held. But now it felt different. Lighter. Kinder. During the prayer, Rachel took my hand. I closed my eyes and thought of everything behind us. The harsh words, the silence, the fear. For the first time, they no longer defined me. When the music started, tears slid down my face. Not sadness, gratitude. For surviving. For speaking again. For finally being heard. By the daughter I thought I'd lost. And deep in my heart, I heard the same sentence that had echoed since the hospital. In that moment, I realized my voice still mattered. After the service, the priest called me over. "Evelyn, I heard what happened. I want you to know I'm proud of you." "Thank you, Father. And if you feel comfortable, I'd like you to share a testimony about faith, about starting over." I looked at Rachel. She nodded with an encouraging smile. "I accept." And that was the story of Evelyn Moore, a woman who spent a lifetime believing love is proven by silence, until she learned real love is proven by truth. You know, sometimes it isn't the scream that destroys us. It's the hush. How many of us grew up hearing that patience is a virtue? No one told us too much patience can kill. Evelyn learned that the hard way, but also the beautiful way. When she finally spoke, it wasn't to wound. It was to set free. The old phone, once just a keepsake from her mother, became the bridge across 3 generations of women. The mother who believed, the daughter who got lost, and the woman in the middle who learned to listen to herself. Sometimes, God doesn't give back what we lost. He gives us back ourselves. Today, 2 years later, Evelyn is still painting. Her studio has become a small classroom where she teaches women from the community, many of them rebuilding too. Rachel opened the support center she dreamed of. She's already helped dozens of women escape financially abusive relationships. And the phone? It's still there, on the studio table. It doesn't ring anymore. It doesn't need to. The message has been delivered. And you? Have you kept quiet too long to preserve a peace that only existed for others? Have you confused love with duty until you forgot who you were? If this story spoke to you, if any part of Evelyn lives in you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss my daily stories. And tell me in the comments, what city and country are you watching from? I want to know how far these women's voices are reaching. Because every comment, every story shared, is a telephone ringing to say, we're still here, there's still time, until next time. With love, I'm Maggie Turner.